I was told that Papa had the gout, which made him very ferocious, and that he would not give up his choice wines and his substantial dinners and suppers, and had quarrelled with his physician, because the latter had dared to say that no medicine could cure him while he lived so freely, that Mamma and the rest were well. Matilda was still wild and reckless, but she had got a fashionable governess, and was considerably improved in her manners, and soon to be introduced to the world. And John and Charles, now at home for the holidays, were, by all accounts, fine, bold, unruly, mischievous boys. "And how are the other people getting on?" said I. "The Greens, for instance?" "Ah, Mr. Green is heartbroken, you know," replied she, with a languid smile. "He hasn't gotten over his disappointment yet, and never will, I suppose. He's doomed to be an old bachelor. And his sisters are doing their best to get married." "And the Melthams?" "Oh, they're jogging on as usual, I suppose, but I know very little about any of them, except Harry," said she, blushing slightly, and smiling again. "I saw a great deal of him while we were in London, for as soon as he heard we were there, he came up under pretence of visiting his brother, and either followed me like a shadow wherever I went, or met me like a reflection at every turn. You needn't look so shocked, Miss Grey. I was very discreet, I assure you, but, you know, one can't help being admired. Poor fellow, he was not my only worshipper, though he was certainly the most conspicuous, and, I think, the most devoted among them all. And that detestable, and Sir Thomas chose to take offence at him, or my profuse expenditure, or something, I don't exactly know what, and hurried me down to the country at a moment's notice, where I am to play the hermit, I suppose, for life." And she bit her lip, and frowned vindictively upon the fair domain she had once so coveted to call her own. "And Mr. Hatfield?" said I. "What is become of him?" Again she brightened up, and answered gaily, "Oh, he made up to an elderly spinster, and married her not long since, weighing her heavy purse against her faded charms, and expecting to find that solace in gold which was denied him in love. Ha, ha!" "Well, and I think that's all. Except Mr. Weston, what is he doing?" "I don't know, I'm sure. He's gone from Horton." "How long since? And where is he gone to?" "I know nothing about him," replied she, yawning, "except that he went about a month ago. I never asked where." I would have asked whether it was to a living or merely another curacy, but thought it better not. "And the people made a great rout about his leaving," continued she, much to Mr. Hatfield's displeasure, for Hatfield didn't like him, because he had too much influence with the common people, and because he was not sufficiently tractable and submissive to him, and for some other unpardonable sins, I don't know what. But now I positively must go and dress. The second bell will ring directly, and if I come to dinner in this guise, I shall never hear the end of it from Lady Ashby. It is a strange thing that one can't be mistress in one's own house. Just ring the bell, and I'll send for my maid, and tell them to get you some tea. Only think of that intolerable woman." "Who, your maid?" "No, my mother-in-law, and my unfortunate mistake. Instead of letting her take herself off to some other house, as she offered to do when I married, I was fool enough to ask her to live here still, and direct the affairs of the house for me, because, in the first place, I hoped we should spend the greater part of the year in town, and in the second place, being so young and inexperienced, I was frightened at the idea of having a houseful of servants to manage, and dinners to order, and parties to entertain, and all the rest of it, and I thought she might assist me with her experience, never dreaming she would prove a usurper, a tyrant, an incubus, a spy, and everything else that's detestable. I wish she was dead." She then turned to give her orders to the footman, who had been standing bolt upright within the door for the last half-minute, and had heard the latter part of her animadversions, and, of course, made his own reflections upon them, notwithstanding the inflexible wooden countenance he thought proper to preserve in the drawing-room. On my remarking afterwards that he must have heard her, she replied, "Oh, no matter. I never care about the footmen. They are mere automatons. It's nothing to them what their superiors say or do. They won't dare to repeat it. And as to what they think, if they presume to think at all, of course nobody cares for that. It would be a pretty thing indeed if we were to be tongue-tied by our servants." So saying, she ran off to make her hasty toilet, leaving me to pilot my way back to my sitting-room, where, in due time, I was served with a cup of tea. After that I sat musing on Lady Ashby's past and present condition, and on what little information I had obtained respecting Mr. Weston, and the small chance there was of ever seeing or hearing anything more of him throughout my quiet, drab-colour life, which, henceforth, seemed to offer no alternative between positive rainy days and days of dull grey clouds without downfall. At length, however, I began to weary of my thoughts, and to wish I knew where to find the library my hostess had spoken of, and to wonder whether I was to remain there, doing nothing till bedtime. As I was not rich enough to possess a watch, I could not tell how time was passing, except by observing the slowly lengthening shadows from the window, which presented a side view, including a corner of the park, a clump of trees whose topmost branches had been colonized by an innumerable company of noisy rooks, and a high wall with a massive wooden gate, no doubt communicating with the stable-yard, as a broad carriage road swept up to it from the park. The shadow of this wall soon took possession of the whole of the ground as far as I could see, forcing the golden sunlight to retreat inch by inch, and at last take refuge in the very tops of the trees. Ere long, even they were left in shadow, the shadow of the distant hills, or of the earth itself, and, in sympathy for the busy citizens of the rookery, I regretted to see their habitation, so lately bathed in glorious light, reduced to the sombre, workaday hue of the lower world, or of my own world within. For a moment, such birds as soared above the rest might still receive the lustre on their wings, which imparted to their sable plumage the hue and brilliance of deep red gold. At last that too departed. Twilight came stealing on. The rocks became more quiet. I became more weary, and wished I was going home tomorrow. At length it grew dark, and I was thinking of ringing for a candle, and betaking myself to bed, when my hostess appeared, with many apologies for having neglected me so long, and laying all the blame upon that nasty old woman, as she called her mother-in-law. "If I didn't sit with her in the drawing-room while Sir Thomas is taking his wine," said she would never forgive me. "And then, if I leave the room the instant he comes, as I have done once or twice, it is an unpardonable offence against Sir dear Thomas. She never showed such disrespect to her husband, and as for affection, wives never think of that nowadays, she supposes. But things were different in her time, as if there was any good to be done by staying in the room, when he does nothing but grumble and scold when he's in a bad humour, talk disgusting nonsense when he's in a good one, and go to sleep on the sofa when he's too stupid for either, which is most frequently the case now, when he has nothing to do but to sort over his wine." "But could you not try to occupy his mind with something better, and engage him to give up such habits? I am sure you have powers of persuasion, and qualifications for amusing a gentleman, which many ladies would be glad to possess." "And so you think I would lay myself out for his amusement? No, that's not my idea of a wife. It's the husband's part to please the wife, not hers to please him, and if he isn't satisfied with her as she is, and thankful to possess her too, he isn't worthy of her, that's all. And as for persuasion, I assure you I shan't trouble myself with that. I have enough to do to bear with him as he is, without attempting to work a reform. I'm sorry I left you so long alone, Miss Grey. How have you passed the time?" "Chiefly in watching the rooks." "Mercy, how dull you must have been! I really must show you the library, and you must ring for everything you want, just as you would in an inn, and make yourself comfortable. I have selfish reasons for wishing to make you happy, because I want you to stay with me, and not fulfill your horrid threat of running away in a day or two. Don't let me keep you out of the drawing-room any longer tonight, for at present I am tired and wish to go to bed." End of chapter 22.